host, Courtney, and I am here this week with the fabulous JuiceBoxx. If you are a regular viewer, you're probably sitting here wondering what the fuck I'm doing here with the Queen, and what does this have to do with motherhood? So we're gonna pop open some bubbles, and then we'll get into it, and I think you'll kind of understand why she's here. You ready?
Yeah, bubbles.
Right. Let's hope I can get this off. Sometimes they get really stuck. Oh, this one's easy.
Oh, okay.
Here we go.
Oh.
Woo! That's a sad one.
The last time I had to pop something was for a video shoot, and it went flying across the
They
room.
usually do. That was a really sad one.
Yeah. I had to do two. One went flying across the room. The other one I shattered.
Oh.
I was like, sorry.
Oops.
It's not alcoholic, right?
Nope. This is a sparkling juice. Today, apple.
Apple.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks so much for coming.
No worries. Sparkling apple juice.
Cute.
Never thought I'd see the day.
I know. With a caged horse. Fun. All right. So before we really get into it, I need to know, and I figure this is the best time to ask, where did you come up with the name JuiceBoxx?
Oh my god. It's kind of like full story. Short form story. So it was just something that me and my friends sort of found from a TV show that we just thought was funny.
Okay.
And then I looked it up, and I read like the Urban Dictionary meaning of it, and how uncensored can I be?
Super uncensored. Go for it.
Okay.
It's like a late night mom show.
Great. Okay. I was
Go
like,
for it.
you asked. And it means a pussy full of cum, and I just thought that was so funny and so disgusting.
That is funny.
Right? I was just like, that's gross, that's funny, and I'm kind of like, that's sort of my personality, and my performance is very sexual, so I was just like, yeah, we'll just stick with that. And I started drag as a joke.
Okay.
Like, I started drag just because I thought it was fun, and I wanted to feel beautiful, and it was just for giggles, and then I ended up just getting good at it and falling in love with it and sticking with it, and then I had a stupid name, and
you couldn't change it.
And I couldn't
it's
change
like
it.
my Snapchat. I started it like just for my friends. And
Yeah.
I named as a joke. They're like, get Snapchat, get Snapchat. And I was like, oh, fine, I'll get Snapchat. So when I go to add them, I made my name Sparkly Titties.
Now you're stuck.
And I'm stuck with it.
Now you're stuck with Sparkly Titties.
So
yeah, and I'm stuck with JuiceBoxx. But now it's kind of funny because now people remember it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So now leading into why you're here.
Yeah.
Off of this vulgar sexual name. What do you have to do with motherhood and children is you censor yourself down and you participate in a really amazing program called Drag Queen Storytime or Hour, depending on the city, which is an amazing program that takes place in public libraries all across North America, where drag queens come and they read to children and do song and dance with them. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the program and its purpose?
Well, basically, it's just kind of a way to show kids different gender identity and different ways that you can sort of live your everyday life, and that gender isn't exactly binary to the way that we grew up with it, where it was just like pink means girl, boys get blue, and everything is very black and white. They can sort of start to see something that is a little bit different, and then also there is kids that are a lot younger that do live outside the binary, so then they can sort of see something that they see in themselves. And then a lot of kids that I knew growing up, they didn't have that, and they had to discover it later, so now they can sort of see it earlier on, and they can sort of live who they are and their truth a little bit earlier. Right?
Which
so
is
it is
great
nice.
because it's less of a struggle for them.
Yeah, and
to
it's
have
easier for
positive
parents.
role models. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So why was it so important for you to participate in the program?
Well, I mean, I was asked to do it, I think early last year. I was asked, and I saw Faye. You know Faye and Fluffy Story Hour?
I've heard of it. Yes.
Yeah, Faye and Fluffy. So Faye Slift and Fluffy, they started this Story Hour thing in Toronto, and it got quite big quite fast. And Faye is like this 5'10", big, hairy, bearded drag queen with these big hairs and these big moo-moos. So it's just like this grand, gorgeous clown that's
Yes.
reading these stories to you. Like, I think she's so beautiful. I have such a crush on her. And then Fluffy is the same. Fluffy has these big wigs and these big outfits, and then they read to kids. And so from there, it started to get popular. So then they started asking other queens to do it. So it was a different group, so Drag Queen Storytime, started to do it, and then I'd seen them do it, and it looked so fun. My husband's a kindergarten teacher. Yeah, adorable. So he was always telling me stories about like the kids and stuff and how important it is. And so when I told him I was asked to do it, he was like, "Oh my god, you have to do it." He's
Yes,
just like,
you have to.
Yeah, he's like, "You have
Non-negotiable.
to." Yeah, he's like, "You're doing it." So it was cute. He sat me down and like showed me how to read to kids.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah, he's like, "This is how you hold books." He's like, and then you pause, and then you ask these questions, and then you do this, and like this is how you control the room. So it was cute, but it was just something that I thought it would be important for me to do for my community too. So I wasn't just like that slutty stripper girl that you see on the corner. Like sometimes you could actually like I could do something reputable and good for a community. So yeah.
Okay. So what kind of stories do you read to the kids?
I always like reading, it's weird, I always get drawn towards the trans stories.
Okay.
Right? I love reading Bunny Bear.
Okay.
Have you ever read Bunny Bear?
I have not.
I love reading Bunny Bear.
We have Tango, the penguin one.
Okay.
And then we have this one here that I brought. I got it. We had the best intentions to bring my oldest down for JuiceBoxx to read a story to him, but leave it to your children to get sick and throw a wrench in the best of your plans. So we've kind of had to forego that portion of today's interview, but I will definitely be linking to some examples of the story hour in the description below. So this is...
It's Okay to Be Different. I've read that one. Yeah, I've definitely read It's Okay to Be Different. It's a fun one. It's better for like little kids. Yeah. I find that I don't get the young ones often. I've been getting like a little bit older, so like grade 3-ish. Okay. I've read to a couple of kindergarten classes, but I've been getting the ones that are a little bit older, so then they like the stories that are a little bit easier.
Have more substance.
Yeah.
Have more of a storyline.
Yeah, exactly.
So what kind of reactions do you tend to get from the children?
They're good. I tend to go a little bit more colorful and more draggy when I go, so they don't just see like, that's a girl, that's a boy, I'm not sure. I want to give them like a very stark, like, it's a character. Yes. So they can kind of, so it makes more sense in their brain, because they're just kids, right? Exactly. So I find with kids, you need to be a little bit more like black and white with it. So I wear bigger hair, I wear like a princess dress, right? I wear bigger sparklier makeup, and they tend to be good. I've only ever had one time where the kids were a little rowdy and they didn't get it. It was a lot of little boys, and they
boys are fun. Both my children are boys, so I know how rowdy they can get.
Yeah, so it was like 7 little boys that just weren't about it. Like they just couldn't vibe. They couldn't get into it. There's always the one kid where you're like, because I always ask questions like, is it okay to wear girls' clothes? Is it okay to do this? And there's always one that's like, no. But then everyone else is like, yes. And so they're just looking around like, oh, okay.
I guess I'm wrong.
I'm the wrong one then. All right, great. And then they usually end up following suit. And it usually, the little bit older ones, you'll ask them questions. And after a bit, they'll start to get curious and ask things and stuff. And it tends to be very polite. And it tends to be like, you know, do you always look like this? Is that a wig? What is it? Are you a boy or a girl? Things like that.
So they're curious, but
they're curious, but they're not mean.
Right.
I've never had kids be malicious.
Which is great, because that just goes to show that kids are open to being accepting.
Yeah, totally.
Whether it's new to them or not.
Yeah, well, homophobia is a learned behavior. Transphobia is a learned behavior.
Exactly, which is why programs like this are so important, because it helps children to kind of accept and not learn this kind of behavior. So obviously, sadly, there are people out there that are a little bit homophobic or transphobic. And they kind of have some harsh things to say about this program, and they don't think it belongs in public libraries, and they're kind of outraged by the whole thing. What would you say to those people?
Don't come. Don't come.
That's my view.
Yeah, they don't like it, don't come. If you don't like it when we go to your school, take your kid off for the day, go to the zoo. Like, don't come. If you have a problem with it, you don't need to voice it all over Facebook. You don't need to write it all over everything, because I find the most ignorant people are the loudest ones.
They are.
Right? So it's just like, just don't even bother. Don't get into it. If you don't want to do it, we still put our pants on one foot at a time. Like, we're the same people. Just leave me alone. I'll leave you alone.
Exactly. You don't. My view is if you're not intentionally harming somebody, psychologically or physically, then leave everybody alone and let them live their life.
Fuck off. Fuck off.
In more blatant terms.
Yeah, blatant terms, just fuck off.
Yeah. Okay, so what would you say to parents at home whose children might have interests that kind of fall outside of what society deems as normal?
Talk to them. Nourish their interests, right? So if they like dolls, or if they like makeup, or if they like, I don't know, building things, or something more masculine that like a girl wouldn't be into, just nourish it. Let them roll with it, because if you stop them from doing it and you don't allow them to do it, they're eventually going to find ways to do it, or they're going to end up resenting you, right? So if it's not hurting anyone, and if it's not hurting them, you can nourish their creativity and nourish their talents to be able to grow into a functioning, happy adult. Rather than like, I've had, my parents were very good. They let me play with dolls, they let me paint and all that fun stuff, and very effeminate things, and I turned out great. Great-ish. But
You've got a great career.
Great career. I'm making money.
You have fun.
Yeah, I have fun. I'm making money. It's good. But they never inhibited me from stuff like that. But I have a lot of friends where their parents did do that, and they have a lot of trouble as an adult being able to accept the feminine things about themselves, or the very masculine things about themselves, because for so long they were told that was wrong and that wasn't right about them. Right? So now as like 30, 35-year-old adults, they're just now starting to embrace who they are. And that's hard.
They've missed out on a big part of the life that they could have been happy.
Yeah, 30
Isn't
years
that
is a
what we
long
all
time.
want? Is we just want our kids to be happy. Whatever that looks like for them, again, as long as they're not intentionally hurting somebody, who cares?
And kids nowadays are a lot more accepting. So I find like schools and stuff, like when you do speak to my husband and stuff and teaching and things, he says like, if there is a more effeminate kid, they don't have it as hard as like when we had it. Like when I was a kid, being effeminate in school was rough because you were very different. But now I find that it is a little bit more normal, that it's a little bit easier for them in school. So I don't think parents should have to worry as much.
Exactly. And just because their interests aren't gender specific now, doesn't mean that that's going to be something they're interested in their whole life. Maybe they just want to try it out. Maybe they see you doing it.
Yeah.
My son watches me do makeup all the time, and he loves it. I don't know if you follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen his makeup tutorials that I put, his stories. He's terrible at it. He's like got like one giant eyebrow, but he tells you all about it. I'm going to do my eyebrows now. I need this palette. I just want to go for it. He sees me do it.
Yeah.
You know what? Maybe he'll grow up to be as fabulous as you.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll grow up to be
a construction worker.
Who cares?
Yeah.
He's having fun. He's exploring.
He's a kid.
Let them be kids. So, speaking of kids can be blunt.
Blunt?
Blunt.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes you're out and your child will say something about somebody they see that might look different than they're used to. And as a parent, you're mortified and embarrassed. What would you like to see parents saying to their children when they ask questions that
are mortifying?
Or just they're so mortified in the moment that they're like, oh my god, how do I answer this without being offensive? Sometimes you just don't know what to say to your kid.
Well, I mean, it really depends on the person. So I think it's a difficult conversation. I do think it's not something that's easy, and it also depends on the person. So if it's the person's appearance, I think it's just about whatever that person looks like or whatever that person is doing. I think it's about quietly having a conversation with your child and just not humiliating that person and not pointing them out and not talking loudly about them, and just kind of saying like, this is just how people look sometimes. This is just how this person lives their life. I'm sure they're happy, and that's fine. And if they're asking like, well, why do they look like this, or why do they look like a boy, and they but they're dressed up like a girl, just be like, as long as they're happy, that's okay, right? And they may actually be a girl, but that's just what they look like, and that's fine. And I think just as long as you reinforce the fact that other people being different is okay, is kind of the main point. Is that right? Was that good?
I don't know. I mean,
that was me just like trying to work out that answer.
I haven't really run into a situation yet.
Yeah.
Where I've been embarrassed by something my children have said.
I've been called.
I know that it happened.
It happens. I've had kids say before I did drag, before I could really grow a beard, and when I had like when I was a lot younger, I had a lot of hair and I couldn't really grow a beard, and kids all the time thought I was a woman, like all the time. But then their parents would just never correct them. They would just be like, "Yeah, that's a woman," and then just let it happen. And I'm like, looking back on it, I'm like, I'm kind of fine with it because their parents were just like, yeah, sure. And they were just letting their kids.
They weren't making a big deal out of it.
Yeah, they weren't making a big deal out of it. I actually had one lady go, yes, honey, give the nice lady the change. And I was just like, what?
Sure.
Yeah, I was just like, great, awesome, thanks.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming today and telling us a little bit about the program and teaching our children kind of acceptance. And that it's okay to be different and how we can encourage our children to embrace themselves. So if you want to follow JuiceBoxx on social media, I'll have that linked below, along with some examples of the Drag Queen Story Hour, and my links to my social media as well. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode, because you never know what's going to happen here on Motherhood Uncorked. And cheers! Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.